Marcus Wellington adjusted his silk tie one more time before stepping into the marble-floored dining room of his Beverly Hills mansion. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting golden light across the mahogany table that could seat 20 people. Today, like every morning for the past 3 years, only 2 chairs would be occupied. His wife Victoria glided into the room wearing a flowing cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's cars. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, and her smile was as bright as the diamond necklace around her neck. She had been beautiful when they married 5 years ago, but now there was something else in her eyes, something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "Good morning, darling," Victoria said, her voice sweet like honey. "I made your favorite breakfast today." Marcus looked at the plate she set before him. Scrambled eggs with herbs, bacon cooked exactly how he liked it, and fresh fruit arranged in a perfect pattern. Everything looked delicious, but his stomach already felt uneasy. For months now, he had been getting sick after eating Victoria's cooking, and he couldn't understand why. "Thank you, sweetheart," he said, picking up his fork. "It looks wonderful." As he ate, Victoria sat across from him, sipping her coffee and watching his every bite. She seemed excited, almost eager, which Marcus found strange. She had never shown much interest in cooking before their marriage. But, suddenly, she insisted on preparing all his meals herself. "How does it taste?" she asked, leaning forward slightly. "Perfect, as always," Marcus replied, though he was already feeling that familiar churning in his stomach. "You've become quite the chef." Victoria's smile widened. "I just want to take good care of my husband. After all, you work so hard at the company." Marcus nodded and continued eating, though each bite became more difficult. The Wellington Corporation had been his life's work, built from nothing into a billion-dollar empire. He was known for his sharp mind and strong constitution, but lately, he felt weak and tired all the time. After breakfast, Marcus excused himself and headed to his home office. The room was lined with books and awards, evidence of his success in the business world. He sat behind his massive desk and tried to focus on the morning reports, but the nausea was getting worse. By 10 o'clock, he was rushing to the bathroom, sick to his stomach once again. This had become a routine he dreaded. Every meal Victoria prepared left him feeling terrible, but when he ate at restaurants or business lunches, he felt fine. He had even seen doctors, but they couldn't find anything wrong with him. "Maybe it's stress," Dr. Richardson had said during his last visit. "Running a corporation like yours can take a toll on the body." But Marcus knew it wasn't stress. He had been dealing with business pressure for decades without any health problems. Something else was making him sick, and it only happened at home. As he splashed cold water on his face, Marcus heard the soft sound of footsteps in the hallway. Through the bathroom door, he could hear Victoria talking to someone in a low voice. He couldn't make out the words, but her tone was different, colder somehow. When he emerged from the bathroom, the hallway was empty. Victoria was nowhere to be seen, but he could hear movement in the kitchen. Probably preparing lunch, he thought with growing dread. Marcus returned to his office and tried to lose himself in work. The Wellington Corporation had several major deals in progress, and his attention to detail had always been his greatest strength. But concentrating was becoming harder each day. His mind felt foggy, and his hands sometimes trembled when he tried to write. Around noon, the intercom on his desk buzzed. "Mr. Wellington?" came the voice of his secretary at the downtown office. "The Harrison Group is on line 1. They want to discuss the merger terms." Marcus picked up the phone, grateful for the distraction. The Harrison Group deal was worth $200 million, and he had been working on it for months. But, as he talked, he found himself struggling to remember important details that should have been second nature to him. "I'll need to call you back," he told the Harrison Group executives, making an excuse about reviewing some documents. After hanging up, Marcus sat in his chair feeling confused and worried. His memory had always been perfect. He could remember conversations from years ago, stock prices from different markets, and complex contract details without notes. But, lately, his mind felt like it was wrapped in cotton. A gentle knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Victoria entered carrying a tray with a steaming bowl and a glass of fresh orange juice. "I brought you some homemade soup," she said with that same bright smile. "You looked a little pale at breakfast, so I thought something light might help. The soup smelled wonderful, chicken and vegetables with herbs he couldn't identify. But, as Victoria set the tray down, Marcus noticed her hands were wearing thin latex gloves, which she quickly removed and tucked into her pocket. "Gloves?" he asked, curious. "Oh, I was just cleaning the bathroom earlier," Victoria said quickly. "You know how I am about germs." Marcus nodded, though he couldn't remember Victoria ever being particularly concerned about cleanliness before. She had always been more interested in shopping and social events than household tasks. As he ate the soup, Victoria sat in the chair across from his desk, watching him intently. Her blue eyes seemed to study his every expression, waiting for something. The soup was delicious, but, again Marcus felt that familiar unease in his stomach. "How's the business going?" Victoria asked, her voice casual but her eyes focused. "Fine," Marcus replied, though he was struggling to remember the details of the morning's phone calls. "Just the usual challenges. Nothing too stressful, I hope. You know how worry can affect your health." Marcus looked at his wife carefully.
I saw it
There
first.
was something in her
No,
tone
that's
that
impossible.
made him uncomfortable.
We have to do
though he
something
couldn't
now.
say
But
exactly
listen to
what.
me.
It was as if she was hinting at something without saying it directly. After finishing the soup, Marcus felt even worse than usual. His head was pounding, and the room seemed to spin slightly when he moved. He excused himself again, heading for the bathroom with growing concern about his condition. This time, the sickness was worse than before. He spent nearly an hour in the bathroom, feeling weak and disoriented. When he finally emerged, he found Victoria in the hallway, still wearing that strange smile. "Poor darling," she said, reaching out to touch his forehead. "Maybe you should rest. I'll cancel your afternoon appointments." Marcus wanted to protest, but he felt too weak to argue. Victoria helped him to their bedroom, where she insisted he lie down. The room was dark and cool, and despite his worries, Marcus found himself falling asleep almost immediately. He dreamed strange dreams about his childhood, about building his company, about meeting Victoria at a charity event 5 years ago. In the dreams, everything was mixed up and confusing, as if his memories were being shuffled like cards. When Marcus woke up, it was late afternoon. The sun was setting, and the mansion felt quiet and empty. He sat up slowly, still feeling weak, but somewhat better than before. His throat was dry, and he needed water. As he walked toward the kitchen, Marcus heard voices coming from the maid's quarters at the back of the house. Victoria was talking to someone, and her voice carried a tone he had never heard before, sharp and commanding. Marcus approached quietly, staying in the shadows of the hallway. Through a partially open door, he could see Victoria talking to Elena Rodriguez, the housekeeper who had worked for his family for over 15 years. Elena was a middle-aged woman from El Salvador who had always been quietly efficient and trustworthy. Marcus had inherited her services when he bought the mansion, and she had become an invaluable part of the household. She cleaned, did laundry, and helped with various tasks, though Victoria had insisted on doing all the cooking herself. "You understand what I'm telling you?" Victoria was saying to Elena, her voice cold and threatening. Elena nodded, looking frightened. "Yes, Mrs. Wellington. I understand." "Good. Because if you ever say anything to anyone about what you've seen, you'll lose more than just your job. Do you know how easy it would be for someone like you to disappear?" Marcus felt his blood run cold. He had never heard Victoria speak to anyone like this, especially not to Elena, who had always been treated with respect in his household. "I won't say anything," Elena whispered, her voice shaking. "I promise. You better not. My husband trusts me completely, and it's going to stay that way. Now get back to your work and forget we had this conversation." Victoria turned to leave, and Marcus quickly stepped back into the shadows. His mind was racing with questions and growing suspicion. What had Elena seen? What was Victoria threatening her about? As Victoria's footsteps faded down the hallway, Marcus waited a few minutes before approaching Elena's room. He knocked gently on the door. "Elena? It's Mr. Wellington. May I speak with you?" The door opened slowly, and Elena's face appeared, her eyes red as if she had been crying. "Yes, Mr. Wellington. Are you all right?" Marcus asked softly. "I thought I heard voices." Elena's eyes darted nervously down the hallway. "Everything is fine, sir. Just discussing household matters with Mrs. Wellington." But Marcus could see the fear in her eyes, and He knew Elena was lying to protect herself. Something was very wrong in his house, and it was connected to his mysterious illness. "Elena," he said quietly, "if there's ever anything you need to tell me, anything at all, you know you can trust me, right?" Elena looked at him for a long moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "Yes, Mr. Wellington," she finally said. "I know." But, as she closed the door, Marcus could see that Elena was terrified. Whatever was happening in his house, it was serious enough to frighten a woman who had worked fearlessly for 15 years. That evening, Victoria prepared dinner as usual, grilled salmon with asparagus and rice. She seemed to be in an especially good mood, chatting about her plans to redecorate the guest bedrooms and her upcoming lunch with friends from the country club. Marcus ate carefully, watching his wife's face as she talked. Every few bites, he noticed her glancing at him expectantly, as if waiting for something to happen. The food tasted normal, but his stomach began to churn almost immediately. "You seem quiet tonight," Victoria observed. "Is something bothering you?" "Just tired," Marcus replied, though his mind was sharp despite his physical discomfort. "Long day. Well, you should take better care of yourself. Health is so important, especially at your age." Marcus was only 45, hardly old, but Victoria spoke as if he were much older. There was something almost mocking in her tone, though she maintained her sweet smile. After dinner, Marcus excused himself early, claiming he needed to review some contracts. Instead, he went to his office and began to think seriously about everything that had been happening. The pattern was too clear to ignore. He only got sick after eating Victoria's cooking, and now he had witnessed her threatening Elena. He decided to do something he had never done before in his marriage: investigate his own wife. Marcus opened his laptop and began searching through household accounts and credit card statements. As the head of a major corporation, he was skilled at finding irregularities in financial records, and he applied those same techniques to his personal accounts. What he found surprised him. Over the past 6 months, Victoria had made several purchases from medical supply companies and chemistry equipment suppliers. She had also been buying books about toxicology and plant-based compounds. All of these purchases were charged to credit cards Marcus had given her for household expenses. The evidence was circumstantial, but it painted a disturbing picture. Victoria appeared to be systematically poisoning him, using knowledge she had gained from books and supplies she had purchased online. But why? Marcus tried to think of any reason his wife would want to harm him. They had signed a prenuptial agreement before marriage, so she wouldn't inherit his fortune if he died. Unless Marcus remembered that the agreement had a clause about long-term illness or incapacity. If he became too sick to run his company, Victoria would gain control of his medical decisions and potentially his business affairs. The realization hit him like a cold wave. Victoria wasn't trying to kill him quickly. She was trying to make him gradually sicker until he was too weak to function. Then, she could have him declared incompetent and take control of his billion-dollar empire. Marcus sat back in his chair, feeling a mixture of anger, fear, and betrayal. The woman he had loved and trusted was slowly destroying his health for money and power. But he was still too sick to think clearly, and he needed proof that would hold up in court. More importantly, he needed to stop eating anything Victoria prepared, but he had to do it in a way that wouldn't make her suspicious. If she realized he knew about her plan, she might try something more drastic. As Marcus pondered his next moves, he heard Victoria's voice calling from the living room. "Darling, I made your favorite tea. It will help you sleep better." The sweet, innocent tone of her voice now sounded sinister to his ears. How long had she been playing this role, pretending to be a loving wife while slowly poisoning him? Marcus woke up the next morning with a plan forming in his mind, though his body felt weaker than ever. The previous night's tea had left him with severe stomach cramps and a pounding headache that still lingered. He had pretended to drink it while Victoria watched, but had poured most of it into a plant when she left the room. Even the small amount he had consumed made him feel terrible. Victoria was already awake, humming softly as she prepared for her morning routine. She seemed unusually cheerful, which Marcus now found deeply unsettling. Every smile, every gentle touch felt like a performance designed to hide her true intentions. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said, kissing his forehead. "You look pale. Are you feeling worse?" A little, Marcus admitted, which wasn't entirely a lie. Maybe I should see Dr. Richardson again. Victoria's expression flickered for just a moment. Was that concern or annoyance in her eyes? Oh, I don't think that's necessary yet. Doctors just want to run expensive tests and prescribe medications that might make you feel worse. Let me take care of you for a few more days. But, Victoria, I've been feeling sick for months now. Surely. Trust me, darling. She interrupted, her voice firm beneath its sweetness. I know what's best for you. Now, let me make you some breakfast. I have a special recipe that will help settle your stomach. As Victoria headed to the kitchen, Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. She was becoming more insistent about controlling his medical care, which fit perfectly with his growing suspicions about her ultimate plan. Marcus waited until he heard Victoria busy in the kitchen before quietly making his way to Elena's quarters. He found the housekeeper folding laundry in the utility room, her movements quick and nervous. When she saw him, her face immediately showed fear. "Mr. Wellington," she said, glancing around as if Victoria might appear at any moment. "Is there something you need?" "Elena, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Marcus kept his voice low and gentle. "I know you're scared, but I think we both know something isn't right in this house." Elena's hands trembled as she continued folding towels. "I don't know what you mean, sir." "Please, Elena. I heard Victoria threatening you yesterday. I know you've seen something that frightened you. If you help me, I promise I'll protect you." For a long moment, Elena said nothing. Then, she looked up at Marcus, and he could see years of suppressed worry in her dark eyes. "Mr. Wellington, you've always been kind to me and my family. When my daughter needed surgery, you helped pay for it. When my husband lost his job, you found him work with your company. You're like family to us, Elena. That's why I need your help now." Elena set down the towels and looked toward the door, listening for any sound of Victoria's approach. "I've seen things, sir. Things that scared me. But if I tell you, and she finds out, she won't find out. I give you my word." Elena took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I've seen Mrs. Wellington putting things in your food. Small bottles with no labels. She keeps them hidden in her bathroom, behind the expensive face creams where she thinks no one will look." Marcus felt his heart racing. "What kind of things?" "I don't know exactly, but they're not normal cooking ingredients. She's very careful about it. She wears gloves and measures everything precisely, like a scientist. And she has books, sir. Books about poisonous plants and chemistry. I've seen them when I clean her study." "How long has this been going on?" "Maybe 8 or 9 months. It started slowly, just a drop or two in your morning coffee. But lately, it's been more. Much more." Marcus closed his eyes, trying to process the confirmation of his worst fears. "Elena, this is very important. Do you know where she keeps these bottles?" "In her private bathroom, the one connected to her dressing room. She thinks I never clean in there because she told me it wasn't necessary. But sometimes I've seen her coming out with bottles in her hands. And the books. Hidden behind other books in her study. Medical books, chemistry books, books about making people sick." Marcus felt sick himself, but not from poison this time. From the horrifying realization that his wife had been systematically trying to destroy his health for nearly a year. "Elena, I need proof. Without evidence, no one will believe us." "What kind of proof?" "I need you to help me get samples of whatever she's putting in my food. And, if possible, photographs of the books and bottles." "Can you do that?" Elena looked terrified but determined. "Yes, sir. But it will be dangerous. If she catches me, I won't let anything happen to you. Do you have a phone with a camera?" Elena nodded. "My daughter gave me a smartphone last Christmas." "Good." When Victoria leaves the house, she usually goes to the country club on Wednesday afternoons. That's when you'll search her private areas. Take pictures of everything. And if you can safely get a sample of whatever chemicals she's using, do that too. "Mr. Wellington, what if she's watching me? What if she has cameras?" Marcus hadn't thought of that possibility, and it made him more anxious. "You're right to be careful. Let's assume she might be monitoring the house somehow. We'll need to be very smart about this." "There's something else, sir," Elena said quietly. "I've overheard phone calls. She talks to someone regularly, always when you're not around. She speaks quietly, but I've heard her mention your company, your health, and something about the timeline. Someone is helping her." I think so. A man's voice, but I don't recognize it. They talk about money and about waiting for you to get sicker before taking the next step. The conspiracy was bigger than Marcus had imagined. Victoria wasn't working alone. She had an accomplice, possibly someone with medical or legal knowledge who was helping her plan his downfall. Elena, from now on, I need you to write down everything you observe. Times, dates, what you see and hear. Keep notes hidden where Victoria will never find them. And, most importantly, never let her know that we've talked. Yes, sir. But, Mr. Wellington, you need to be careful too. Stop eating her food completely if you can. I'm trying, but I have to be subtle about it. If she suspects I know something, she might try to poison me more severely, or she might disappear before we can prove what she's done. Elena nodded gravely. I understand. I'll help you, Mr. Wellington. You've been good to my family, and what she's doing is evil. As Elena returned to her work, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and dread. He finally had an ally, but the danger was greater than he had initially thought. Victoria had a partner in her scheme, and they were clearly planning something bigger than just making him sick. Marcus returned to his office and immediately began making subtle preparations. He used his private computer to research private investigators in the Los Angeles area, looking for someone with experience in corporate espionage and criminal investigations. He also began transferring important business documents to secure cloud storage that only he could access. Around 10 o'clock, Victoria knocked on his office door with a breakfast tray. I made you something special, she announced, entering with her usual bright smile. Pancakes with fresh berries and a protein smoothie. You need to keep your strength up. The smoothie was a pale green color, and Marcus immediately suspected it contained more than fruit and protein powder. That looks wonderful, but I'm not very hungry this morning. My stomach is still upset from last night. Victoria's smile faltered slightly. Darling, you need to eat. You've lost weight, and I'm worried about you. Just try a little bit. Maybe later. I have some important calls to make first. The calls can wait. Your health is more important than business. Victoria's voice had a steel edge beneath its sweetness. I insist you eat something. Marcus realized that refusing food entirely would raise her suspicions. All right, but just a small amount. He ate a few bites of pancakes, avoiding the smoothie entirely. Even the small amount of food made his stomach churn within minutes. Whatever Victoria was using, it was potent and fast-acting. I think I need to use the bathroom, Marcus said, standing up quickly. Of course, darling. Take your time. As Marcus headed to the bathroom, he heard Victoria on the phone in the kitchen. Her voice was low and urgent, but he couldn't make out the words. When he returned, she was gone, and the breakfast dishes had been cleared away. Marcus spent the rest of the morning researching his symptoms and comparing them to various poisoning scenarios. The pattern matched several slow-acting toxins, particularly plant-based alkaloids that could cause nausea, weakness, confusion, and memory problems without immediately threatening life. Around noon, Marcus received a call from his attorney, Robert Chen, who had been handling some routine corporate matters. Marcus, I need to discuss something with you. Victoria called me yesterday asking about the procedures for medical power of attorney. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What exactly did she want to know? She said she was concerned about your health and wanted to understand what would happen if you became incapacitated. She asked about who would make medical decisions and how business operations would be affected. What did you tell her? I explained the basics, that as your spouse, she would have certain rights regarding medical decisions, but business matters would be handled according to your corporate succession plans. Marcus, is everything all right? You sound concerned. Marcus realized he needed to be very careful about what he said, even to his trusted attorney. Robert, I want you to prepare some additional documentation for me. New medical directives, updated business succession plans, and revised power of attorney assignments. Can you do that quietly? Of course, but may I ask why the urgency? I'll explain later. For now, just prepare the documents and don't discuss this with anyone, including Victoria. After hanging up, Marcus felt a sense of urgency growing stronger. Victoria was already consulting lawyers about taking control if he became incapacitated. The timeline Elena had mentioned was probably moving faster than he had hoped. That afternoon, Victoria announced she was going out for lunch with friends and wouldn't be back until evening. Will you be all right without me? She asked with mock concern. I'll be fine. Elena can heat up something simple if I get hungry. No, I don't want Elena cooking for you. She doesn't understand your dietary restrictions. I'll prepare something before I leave. Victoria spent nearly an hour in the kitchen, preparing what she called a healing soup that would be easy on his stomach. Marcus watched her carefully, noting that she made 2 servings, one for him and one that she put in the refrigerator. After Victoria left, Marcus waited 20 minutes to make sure she was really gone, then called Elena to his office. This is our chance, he told her. Victoria will be gone for at least 3 hours. Elena nodded nervously. I'm ready, Mr. Wellington. Remember, photographs of everything you can find. Books, bottles, any notes or documents. If you can safely take samples of the chemicals, use these small containers. Marcus handed her several clean specimen jars he had found in his bathroom cabinet. What about the soup she made for you? I'm going to take a sample of that too. We need to have everything analyzed by a laboratory. Elena headed toward Victoria's private areas while Marcus carefully collected a sample of the soup. The liquid had an unusual color and a slightly bitter smell that normal chicken broth shouldn't have. He sealed the sample in a jar and hid it in his office safe. 30 minutes later, Elena returned with her smartphone full of photographs and 2 small jars containing clear liquid. Her hands were shaking, but she looked determined. I found them, Mr. Wellington. The bottles are exactly where I told you, and there are many more than I thought. She has at least a dozen different chemicals, all with handwritten labels that say things like Formula A and Daily Dose. There are also notebooks with dates and dosage information. Marcus looked through the photos on Elena's phone, and what he saw made him feel sick with anger. Victoria had been keeping detailed records of her poisoning schedule, noting his reactions to different doses and combinations of chemicals. She had been treating him like a laboratory experiment. And the books? He asked. Books about toxic plants, chemistry guides, even medical textbooks about neurological disorders and mental incapacity. One book was about how to make poisoning look like natural illness. Marcus stared at the evidence, finally understanding the full scope of his wife's plan. She wasn't just trying to make him sick. She was trying to give him symptoms that would mimic a degenerative neurological disease. That way, when she had him declared incompetent, it would seem like a tragic but natural medical condition. Elena, you've been incredibly brave. But we're not done yet. I need to get this evidence to professionals who can analyze it and help us build a case. What do we do about Mrs. Wellington? When she comes home, she'll expect you to eat the soup. I'll have to fake being sick from it without actually eating it. Can you help me dispose of it safely? Yes, sir. I'll pour it down the drain and wash the bowl thoroughly so there's no trace. As Elena left to dispose of the poisoned soup, Marcus sat in his office feeling a mixture of relief and determination. For the first time in months, he had hope. He had evidence. He had an ally. And he was beginning to understand Victoria's plan clearly enough to fight back. But he also knew that the most dangerous part was just beginning. Victoria and her unknown accomplice had invested too much time and effort in their scheme to give up easily. When they realized their plan was failing, they might try something much more drastic. Marcus picked up his phone and called the private investigator he had researched earlier. I need to hire you immediately, he told the man. This is a matter of life and death, and I need someone who can work completely confidentially. The investigator agreed to meet him the next morning at a location away from the mansion. Marcus also made appointments with an independent laboratory to analyze the chemical samples and with a different attorney who specialized in criminal law. Victoria's heels clicked across the marble foyer as she returned from her lunch, her voice carrying a false cheerfulness that now made Marcus's skin crawl. Darling, I'm home. How are you feeling? Marcus had spent the last hour practicing his performance in the mirror, preparing to act sicker than he actually felt. He had to convince Victoria that her poison was still working while secretly gathering more evidence against her. Not very well, he called out weakly from his office chair. I tried to eat the soup you made, but it made me feel worse. Victoria appeared in the doorway, and Marcus noticed how her eyes immediately scanned the room, checking to see if anything had been disturbed. Her gaze lingered on his desk, then moved to the empty soup bowl that Elena had carefully placed there to maintain the illusion. "Oh no, sweetheart," Victoria cooed. But Marcus caught the satisfied glint in her eyes. "Maybe you're developing a stomach flu. There's been one going around the club." "Maybe," Marcus agreed, letting his voice sound confused and tired. "I can't seem to think clearly anymore. I forgot about 3 important meetings today." "Well, that's what assistants are for," Victoria said, moving closer to feel his forehead. "You do feel warm. I think you should go to bed early tonight." As Victoria fussed over him, Marcus studied her face carefully. She was clearly pleased with his condition, though she was trying to hide it behind expressions of concern. Every symptom he described seemed to make her more satisfied, which confirmed his worst suspicions about her intentions. That evening, Victoria insisted on making him chamomile tea with honey, claiming it would help him sleep. Marcus accepted the cup gratefully, then excused himself to use the bathroom. While there, he poured the tea down the sink and refilled the cup with plain water from the tap. When he returned, Victoria was waiting expectantly. "How does it taste?" she asked as he pretended to sip. "Soothing," Marcus replied. "Thank you for taking such good care of me." Victoria's smile seemed genuine for the first time in days. "I just want my husband to be healthy and happy." But Marcus knew that Victoria's definition of healthy meant sick enough to be declared incompetent, and happy meant too confused to realize he was being poisoned. The next morning, Marcus woke up feeling clearer than he had in weeks. By avoiding Victoria's poisoned food and drink for just one day, his body was already beginning to recover. He had to be careful not to seem too alert, but the improvement in his thinking gave him hope. At 9 a.m., Marcus met with private investigator David Santos at a small coffee shop 20 minutes away from the mansion. Santos was a former police detective with experience in corporate fraud and domestic criminal cases. Marcus had chosen him because of his reputation for discretion and his background in chemical evidence analysis. "Mr. Wellington," Santos said as they sat in a corner booth away from other customers, "your phone call yesterday was concerning. Tell me exactly what's been happening." Marcus explained the entire situation: his mysterious illness, Victoria's suspicious behavior, Elena's observations, and the evidence they had discovered. He showed Santos the photographs Elena had taken and handed over the chemical samples they had collected. Santos examined the photos on Marcus's phone with growing alarm. "This is serious, Mr. Wellington. Based on what I'm seeing here, your wife appears to be conducting a systematic poisoning campaign. These notebooks show dosage tracking and symptom monitoring that suggests she has significant knowledge of toxicology. Can you prove it? We'll need laboratory analysis of these samples, but the photographic evidence is already quite damning. The question is, how do you want to proceed? If we involve law enforcement immediately, your wife might destroy evidence or flee. But if we wait too long to gather more proof, you could be in genuine danger." Marcus had been thinking about this dilemma all night. "I want to gather enough evidence to ensure she's convicted and sent to prison. But I also need to identify her accomplice." Elena overheard phone conversations with a man who seems to be helping with the planning. That complicates things. A conspiracy charge would be much more serious. But it also means there are more people involved who might be dangerous. Santos leaned forward. "Mr. Wellington, I have to ask, do you have any idea who might be working with your wife?" "I've been thinking about that. It has to be someone with medical or legal knowledge, someone who understands how to make poisoning look like natural illness. It could be a doctor, a lawyer, or even someone from the pharmaceutical industry. What about people in your business circle? Anyone who might benefit from your incapacity?" Marcus considered this carefully. There are always people who would like to see Wellington Corporation struggle, but Victoria doesn't have close relationships with any of my business rivals. Her social circle is mostly other wealthy wives and country club members. We need to find out who she's been calling. I can get phone records, but that will take a few days. In the meantime, I want you to be extremely careful about what you eat and drink. I'm trying, but I have to maintain the illusion that I'm still getting sick. If Victoria realizes I know about the poisoning, she might try something more drastic." Santos nodded grimly. "You're right to be cautious. Poisoners who feel cornered sometimes escalate to more immediate methods. Do you have somewhere safe you could go if necessary?" "My corporate headquarters has security and medical facilities. I could claim I need to sleep there because of work deadlines." "Good. Keep that option available. And, Mr. Wellington, I strongly recommend you start documenting everything yourself. Keep a detailed diary of your symptoms, Victoria's behavior, and anything unusual that happens. Date and time everything. After the meeting with Santos, Marcus drove to an independent laboratory across town. The technicians there agreed to analyze his chemical samples on a rush basis, promising results within 48 hours. Marcus paid extra for complete confidentiality and requested that all communication be through a private email account Victoria didn't know about. When Marcus returned home, he found Victoria in the garden, talking quietly on her cell phone. She was standing near the rose bushes at the far end of the property, clearly trying to avoid being overheard. Marcus parked his car quietly and approached through the side entrance, staying out of sight behind a large hedge. Moving faster than we expected, Victoria was saying. His memory is definitely deteriorating, and the physical weakness is becoming more pronounced. Marcus couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Victoria's responses gave him clues about what was being discussed. No, I don't think we need to increase the dosage yet. The neurological symptoms are progressing nicely, and I don't want to risk making him too sick too quickly. There was a pause while the other person spoke. The maid is still a problem, but I've made it clear what will happen if she talks. She's scared enough to keep quiet. Another pause. Yes, the legal preparations are almost complete. Once he starts showing signs of serious cognitive impairment, we can begin the competency proceedings. Dr. Morrison assured me that the symptoms will be consistent with early-onset dementia. Marcus felt his heart racing. Dr. Morrison, that was a name he could investigate. And the mention of competency proceedings confirmed that Victoria was planning to have him declared legally incapable of managing his affairs. I estimate another 3 to 4 weeks before he's weak enough to be hospitalized. Once he's in a medical facility under controlled conditions, we can accelerate the process. Victoria ended the call and began walking back toward the house. Marcus quickly retreated to his car and pretended to be just arriving home. He made sure to look tired and confused as he entered through the front door. There you are, Victoria said brightly. Where did you go? You shouldn't be driving when you're feeling so poorly. I just went to the office for a few minutes, Marcus replied, acting befuddled. I think I forgot something important, but I can't remember what it was. Victoria's eyes lit up with satisfaction. Oh, darling, that's exactly why you shouldn't be working so hard. Your mind needs rest. Maybe you're right, Marcus said, allowing his voice to sound defeated. I'm having trouble concentrating on anything lately. Why don't you lie down for a while? I'll make you some lunch that's easy to digest. Marcus agreed and went to his bedroom, but instead of resting, he immediately began researching Dr. Morrison. Using his laptop, he found several doctors with that name in the Los Angeles area. One of them, Dr. James Morrison, was a neurologist specializing in dementia and cognitive disorders. His practice was located in Beverly Hills, and his client list included many wealthy patients. Marcus studied Dr. Morrison's background and found some interesting information. The doctor had been involved in several high-profile competency cases, always representing the family members who wanted patients declared incompetent. He had also been investigated by the medical board 3 years ago for questionable diagnostic practices, though no formal charges had been filed. This had to be Victoria's accomplice. Dr. Morrison had the medical knowledge to help plan the poisoning and the legal experience to handle competency proceedings. He would also benefit financially from a long-term case involving a wealthy patient. Marcus immediately sent this information to David Santos, along with the details of the phone conversation he had overheard. Now they had a specific target to investigate, which would help focus their evidence-gathering efforts. Around noon, Victoria brought him a tray with soup, sandwiches, and iced tea. The meal looked innocent enough, but Marcus was now expert at identifying the subtle signs that food had been tampered with. The iced tea had a slightly greenish tint that normal tea shouldn't have, and the soup smelled faintly of almonds, a common characteristic of certain plant-based poisons. This looks wonderful, Marcus said, but I'm still feeling nauseous. Maybe I'll try to eat something later. Victoria's expression hardened slightly. Marcus, you have to eat something. You're losing too much weight. I know, but everything I eat makes me feel worse. Maybe I should see a doctor. We've discussed this. Doctors will just run expensive tests and give you medications with side effects. I'm taking perfectly good care of you. Marcus noticed that Victoria was becoming more insistent about controlling his medical care and more frustrated when he didn't eat her poisoned food. This suggested that her timeline was being disrupted by his resistance. All right, I'll try to eat a little, he conceded. Marcus ate a small amount of the solid food, avoiding the soup and iced tea entirely. He made sure Victoria saw him eating, but he disposed of most of the food when she left the room. Elena had helped him work out a system. She would come by later to clear dishes and dispose of any remaining poisoned food safely. That afternoon, Marcus received a call from the laboratory. The preliminary results on his chemical samples were shocking. They had found traces of several toxic alkaloids commonly derived from plants like foxglove, oleander, and castor beans. These substances, when administered in small doses over time, could cause exactly the symptoms Marcus had been experiencing: nausea, weakness, confusion, and memory problems. More importantly, prolonged exposure to these toxins could cause permanent neurological damage that would mimic the symptoms of degenerative brain diseases. Victoria wasn't just trying to make him temporarily sick. She was trying to cause lasting brain damage that would justify declaring him incompetent. The laboratory technician explained that the combination of toxins was particularly sophisticated. This isn't something an amateur would know how to mix, he told Marcus. Whoever prepared these compounds has significant knowledge of plant chemistry and toxicology. Marcus immediately called Santos with the laboratory results. The private investigator was equally alarmed by the findings. This changes everything, Mr. Wellington. We're not just dealing with attempted poisoning. We're looking at a sophisticated attempt to cause permanent brain damage for financial gain. This is extremely serious criminal behavior. What's our next step? I'm going to dig deep into Dr. Morrison's background and his relationship with your wife. I'm also going to set up surveillance to document their communications and meetings. But, Mr. Wellington, I'm concerned about your safety. These people are playing for very high stakes. How much longer do you think we need to gather evidence? With what we have now, the laboratory results, the photographs, and your testimony, we probably have enough for arrests. But if we can document the conspiracy and catch them in the act of planning, we'll have a much stronger case. Marcus agreed to continue the dangerous charade for a few more days, but he insisted on additional safety measures. Santos arranged for discreet security surveillance of the mansion and gave Marcus emergency contact numbers he could call if the situation became immediately dangerous. That evening, Victoria prepared dinner with unusual care, making Marcus's favorite meal, grilled steak with roasted vegetables. She seemed excited about something, and Marcus wondered if this meal contained a stronger dose of poison than usual. "This smells incredible," Marcus said, though he had no intention of eating more than a few bites. "I wanted to make something special for you. You've been so sick lately, and I thought a good meal might help you feel better." As they ate, Victoria watched Marcus intently, as if waiting for something specific to happen. Her attention was so focused that Marcus became genuinely worried about what she might have put in the food. "How do you feel?" she asked after he had eaten a small amount. "The same, really. Still weak and confused." Victoria looked disappointed, then thoughtful. "Maybe you need something stronger to help with your symptoms. I've been reading about some natural remedies that might be more effective." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Stronger sounded like Victoria was planning to escalate her poisoning campaign. The timeline she had mentioned to her accomplice might be accelerating. After dinner, Marcus excused himself and immediately contacted Santos. "I think they're planning to increase the dosage," he told the investigator. "Victoria seemed disappointed that I wasn't sicker tonight, and she mentioned using stronger remedies. That's exactly what I was afraid of. Mr. Wellington, I think it's time to end this. We have enough evidence to involve law enforcement, and the risk to your health is becoming too great. What about catching them in the act? We can set up a controlled situation where Victoria thinks she's administering poison while we're actually documenting everything. But first, I want you out of that house tonight. Can you go to your corporate headquarters?" Marcus spent the night at Wellington Corporation headquarters, sleeping in the executive suite that he kept for late business meetings. For the first time in months, he slept peacefully without worrying about what toxins might be coursing through his system. When he woke up, his mind felt clearer than it had in ages. confirming how much damage Victoria's poisoning campaign had been doing to his cognitive function. David Santos arrived early with updates from his overnight investigation into Dr. James Morrison. The private investigator had discovered a web of connections that painted a disturbing picture of professional corruption and criminal conspiracy. Dr. Morrison has been involved in at least 6 cases over the past 4 years where wealthy patients were declared incompetent under suspicious circumstances, Santos reported, spreading files across Marcus's conference table. In each case, family members gained control of significant assets, and Morrison was paid substantial consulting fees. Marcus studied the documents with growing anger. Are you saying he's done this before? Multiple times. The pattern is always similar. Gradual onset of neurological symptoms that appear to be natural disease progression, family members expressing concern about the patient's decision-making capacity, and Morrison providing expert medical testimony that supports incompetency declarations. What happened to the patients? That's the most disturbing part. 3 of them died within a year of being declared incompetent, all from what were listed as complications from their neurological conditions. The other 3 are currently in expensive private care facilities, completely incapacitated and unable to communicate. Marcus felt sick thinking about how close he had come to joining that list of victims. How long has Morrison been working with Victoria? Phone records show they first contacted each other about 8 months ago, right around the time your symptoms started getting worse. Since then, they've been in regular communication, sometimes daily during the past few weeks. Have you been able to record any of their conversations? Not yet, but I have something better. Morrison's office assistant is willing to cooperate with us. She's been suspicious of his activities for months and kept copies of some documents she thought were questionable. Santos handed Marcus several photocopied papers. They included medical reports Morrison had prepared describing symptoms Marcus had never actually experienced, psychological evaluations based on examinations that had never taken place, and legal documents outlining procedures for declaring him incompetent. According to these reports, you've been suffering from early-onset Alzheimer's disease for over 6 months, Santos explained. Morrison has documented progressive cognitive decline, episodes of confusion and paranoia, and inability to make rational business decisions. But I've never even met this man, Marcus protested. That's what makes this so sophisticated. Morrison has been preparing a complete medical history based solely on information Victoria provided him. When the time comes for competency hearings, he would testify as an expert witness about your condition, using these fabricated records as evidence. Marcus realized the full scope of the conspiracy was even worse than he had imagined. Victoria and Morrison hadn't just been poisoning him. They had been building an elaborate legal framework to steal his entire fortune while making it appear legitimate. There's more, Santos continued. Morrison's assistant found financial records showing he's received over $200,000 from Victoria over the past 6 months, supposedly for medical consultations. But there's also evidence of a much larger payment arrangement. He's supposed to receive $2 million when the competency proceedings are completed successfully. Where would Victoria get $2 million to pay him? From your assets, once she gains control of them. The initial payments came from joint accounts you set up for household expenses, but the bigger payoff would come after she has access to your business interests. Marcus studied the timeline of payments and realized Victoria had been methodically draining their joint accounts to fund this conspiracy. She had been using his own money to pay for the plot to destroy his life. Santos, I want to catch them both. Not just Victoria, but Morrison too. If he's done this to other people, he needs to be stopped. I agree, and I have a plan. But it's going to require you to put yourself at risk one more time. Santos outlined his strategy. They would set up a situation where Victoria believed she was giving Marcus a final, large dose of poison, enough to cause the severe neurological episode that would trigger immediate hospitalization and competency proceedings. However, Marcus would actually receive a harmless substitute, while hidden cameras recorded Victoria administering what she thought was a potentially lethal dose. The key is timing, Santos explained. We need Victoria to think you're having a medical emergency that requires Morrison's immediate intervention. That will bring both conspirators together at the same time, and we'll have law enforcement ready to arrest them both. Marcus felt nervous about the plan, but he was determined to see it through. What about Elena? She's been helping us, but she's also in danger if this goes wrong. I've arranged for Elena to be safely away from the house during the operation. She's going to visit her daughter in San Diego for a few days, starting tomorrow. And the police? Are they ready to move? Detective Maria Gonzalez from the LAPD Fraud Division has been briefed on the entire situation. She's assembled a team that includes specialists in domestic crimes and financial fraud. They'll be positioned nearby when we spring the trap. Marcus spent the rest of the day preparing for what would hopefully be the final confrontation with Victoria. He returned to the mansion that evening, making sure to appear weaker and more confused than he actually felt. Victoria seemed surprised but pleased to see him. "Darling, I thought you were staying downtown for several days." "I finished my business early," Marcus said, allowing his voice to sound exhausted. "Besides, I missed being home. I don't feel safe anywhere else when I'm this sick." Victoria's eyes lit up with what Marcus now recognized as predatory satisfaction. "Of course you don't. This is where I can take proper care of you." That night, Victoria was more attentive than she had been in weeks, fussing over Marcus's comfort and insisting on preparing his meals personally. She seemed excited about something, and Marcus suspected she was planning to escalate her poisoning campaign. The next morning, Elena left for San Diego as planned, giving Marcus and Victoria a believable reason to be alone in the house. Victoria seemed pleased by Elena's absence, which confirmed Marcus's suspicions that she had been planning something that required privacy. Around noon, Victoria brought Marcus a special lunch she claimed would help restore his strength. "I've been researching new nutritional approaches for your condition," she said, setting down a tray with soup, sandwiches, and a large glass of what appeared to be fruit smoothie. The smoothie was an unusual purple color, and Marcus could smell a distinctly bitter aroma that he now associated with Victoria's poisoning compounds. This appeared to be the moment Santos had been waiting for. "This looks wonderful," Marcus said. "But I'm feeling especially nauseous today. Maybe I should just rest." "No, darling, you need nutrition. Your body is getting weaker every day, and you have to maintain your strength." Victoria's voice had a firm edge that Marcus had learned to recognize as her true personality, showing through the caring wife facade. "I suppose you're right," Marcus agreed reluctantly. As he lifted the smoothie to his lips, Victoria watched intently, her eyes bright with anticipation. Marcus knew that hidden cameras were recording every moment, and that Santos was monitoring the situation from a surveillance van parked nearby. Marcus pretended to drink the smoothie while actually allowing most of it to spill back into the glass. The small amount that did touch his lips had an intensely bitter taste that made him want to gag. Whatever Victoria had put in this drink, it was much stronger than anything she had used before. "How does it taste?" Victoria asked eagerly. "Different," Marcus replied. "What did you put in it?" "Just fruits and vitamins. Special ingredients that will help your brain function better." Marcus continued to pretend drinking while Victoria watched. After a few minutes, she began to look impatient, as if expecting something to happen quickly. "Victoria," Marcus said carefully, "I'm starting to feel strange. My head is spinning, and my vision seems blurry." This was part of the plan. Marcus was supposed to fake the severe neurological symptoms that would prompt Victoria to call Dr. Morrison. Victoria's face showed immediate excitement mixed with fake concern. "Oh no, sweetheart. Maybe you're having a reaction to the smoothie. Let me call Dr. Morrison right away." "Dr. Morrison? I don't know any Dr. Morrison. He's a specialist I've been consulting about your condition. He's been helping me understand what's happening to your health." Victoria left the room to make the phone call, and Marcus could hear her speaking urgently. "It's happening now," she was saying. "Yes, just like you predicted. His symptoms are much worse suddenly." "No, I gave him exactly the amount we discussed." "Yes, bring the papers with you." When Victoria returned, she was carrying legal documents that Marcus recognized from Santos's photographs as competency proceedings paperwork. "Dr. Morrison is coming right away," Victoria announced. "He wants to examine you because your symptoms seem to be accelerating." Marcus continued to act confused and disoriented while secretly feeling proud of his performance. Everything was going according to plan, and soon both Victoria and Morrison would be caught in their own trap. 20 minutes later, a tall man with gray hair and An expensive suit arrived at the mansion. Dr. Morrison carried a medical bag and a briefcase full of legal documents, clearly prepared to begin the process of having Marcus declared incompetent. "How is he?" Morrison asked Victoria as they entered the living room where Marcus was lying on the sofa. "Much worse than before. The neurological symptoms came on very suddenly, after he drank the smoothie." Morrison approached Marcus with a stethoscope and began conducting what appeared to be a medical examination. "Mr. Wellington, I'm Dr. Morrison. Your wife asked me to evaluate your condition. Can you tell me what year it is?" Marcus pretended to be confused and gave incorrect answers to Morrison's questions, acting as if his cognitive function had suddenly deteriorated dramatically. Meanwhile, hidden cameras recorded every word of the conversation. "This is consistent with rapid-onset dementia," Morrison told Victoria. "His condition has clearly progressed to the point where he's no longer capable of making rational decisions about his health or finances." "What do we do now?" Victoria asked, though Marcus could hear the excitement in her voice. "I'll need to have him hospitalized immediately for proper evaluation and care. Once he's in a controlled medical environment, we can begin the formal competency proceedings." Morrison pulled out legal documents from his briefcase. "These papers will give you temporary guardianship while we arrange for permanent medical power of attorney." As Morrison and Victoria discussed their plans for taking control of Marcus's life and fortune, Marcus knew that hidden microphones were recording every word of their conspiracy. The evidence Santos and the police would gather from this conversation would be enough to send both conspirators to prison for years. "Should I call an ambulance?" Victoria asked. "Yes, but use the private medical transport service I recommended. They'll take him directly to the facility where I have privileges, and we can control the information that gets released about his condition." Marcus realized this was the final piece of their plan. They intended to have him taken to a private hospital where Morrison could continue the poisoning under the guise of medical treatment, ensuring that Marcus would become permanently incapacitated or even die. As Victoria reached for the phone to call the ambulance, Marcus heard the sound he had been waiting for, multiple cars arriving in the driveway. Santos had given the signal for law enforcement to move in. The front door burst open, and Detective Gonzalez entered with several officers, all wearing protective gear and carrying weapons. "Police." "Nobody move," Gonzalez commanded. Victoria's face went white with shock, while Morrison immediately began demanding to know what was happening. "Dr. James Morrison and Victoria Wellington, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted poisoning, fraud, and multiple other charges," Detective Gonzalez announced. As officers handcuffed both conspirators, Marcus sat up on the sofa, suddenly, appearing much more alert than he had moments before. "What's happening?" Victoria gasped, staring at Marcus in confusion. "How are you? You were supposed to be dying?" Marcus finished. "Sorry to disappoint you, Victoria, but I stopped drinking your poison weeks ago." The look of shock and rage on Victoria's face was something Marcus would remember for the rest of his life. The woman who had pretended to love him while systematically destroying his health had finally been exposed for what she truly was. 6 months later, Marcus Wellington sat in a federal courtroom watching as the judge sentenced Victoria to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole. Dr. Morrison had already received 30 years for his role in the conspiracy and for the other cases where elderly patients had died under suspicious circumstances. The investigation that followed their arrest had uncovered a criminal network that was much larger than anyone had initially imagined. Victoria and Morrison were part of a sophisticated operation that targeted wealthy individuals, particularly elderly people with substantial assets and limited family oversight. The FBI had identified at least 12 victims over the past 5 years, with total stolen assets exceeding $50 million. The defendants engaged in a calculated and systematic campaign of poisoning designed to incapacitate the victim and steal his fortune, Judge Patricia Andrews said as she delivered Victoria's sentence. This was not a crime of passion, but a cold-blooded attempt at murder for financial gain, aggravated by the defendant's abuse of her position as a trusted spouse. Marcus felt no satisfaction in Victoria's downfall, only a profound sadness about how completely he had been deceived by someone he had loved. The woman he thought he had married had never really existed. She had been playing a role from the very beginning, targeting him as a wealthy mark for her criminal enterprise. Elena Rodriguez was sitting in the courtroom gallery, having testified as a key witness during the trial. Her courage in gathering evidence and her willingness to speak truth despite Victoria's threats had been crucial to securing the convictions. Marcus had set up a substantial trust fund for Elena's family and had given her a permanent position overseeing security at all his properties. After the sentencing, Detective Gonzalez approached Marcus in the courthouse hallway. "Mr. Wellington, I wanted you to know that the investigation into Morrison's other victims has led to additional arrests. We've identified at least 4 other conspirators in similar schemes around the country. Are the surviving victims getting justice?" "Yes. And because of the evidence from your case, we're able to prosecute those cases much more effectively. Your willingness to go through with the sting operation probably saved other lives." Marcus nodded, feeling some measure of peace knowing that their suffering had prevented other families from going through similar ordeals. The months of testimony and legal proceedings had been emotionally exhausting, but seeing justice served made it worthwhile. Private investigator David Santos joined them in the hallway, carrying a final report on the case. "The financial recovery is going well," he told Marcus. "We've been able to trace and recover most of the money Victoria stole from your accounts. She had hidden assets and offshore accounts that we're working with federal authorities to seize." "What about the other victims' families?" "With Morrison's conviction, several civil lawsuits are moving forward. The families of the patients who died will likely recover significant damages from his malpractice insurance and seized assets." As they walked toward the courthouse exit, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed since the nightmare began. His physical health had fully recovered once the poisoning stopped, but the emotional healing had taken much longer. He had gone through months of therapy to deal with the trauma of being betrayed by someone he loved and trusted. The Wellington Corporation had thrived during the legal proceedings. Marcus's absence from day-to-day operations had forced him to delegate more responsibility to his management team, and the company had actually grown stronger as a result. The near-death experience had also changed his priorities. He was spending more time on charitable work and less time focused purely on business expansion. Outside the courthouse, a small group of reporters was waiting for statements. Marcus had learned to deal with the media attention that came with such a high-profile case, though he preferred to keep his comments brief and focused on the legal outcomes rather than personal details. "Mr. Wellington, how do you feel now that Victoria and Dr. Morrison have been sentenced?" asked a reporter from the Los Angeles Times. "I'm grateful that justice has been served, both for me and for the other victims of this criminal conspiracy," Marcus replied. "I hope these convictions will serve as a warning to anyone who thinks they can prey on vulnerable people with impunity. Do you have any advice for other people who might be in similar situations?" Marcus paused thoughtfully. "Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong in your closest relationships, don't ignore those feelings. And if you're experiencing unexplained health problems, seek independent medical attention from doctors who have no connection to the people around you." After the reporters dispersed, Marcus drove back to his Beverly Hills mansion. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, without the constant undercurrent of danger and deception. He had remodeled Victoria's private areas completely, removing any trace of the woman who had used those spaces to plan his destruction. Elena was waiting for him in the kitchen, preparing lunch. She had become much more than a housekeeper over the months since Victoria's arrest. She was now head of household security and Marcus's most trusted advisor on domestic matters. "How did the sentencing go?" Elena asked as Marcus sat down at the kitchen table. "Victoria got 25 years. Morrison got 30. They won't be hurting anyone else for a very long time." Elena nodded with satisfaction. "Good. That woman was evil, Mr. Wellington. Pure evil. I've seen many things in my life, but I never saw anyone who could smile and be kind while trying to kill someone they were supposed to love." Marcus had learned that Elena's background was more complex than he had initially known. She had fled El Salvador during the Civil War, losing family members to violence and persecution. Her ability to recognize danger and her courage in the face of threats had been shaped by experiences far more traumatic than anything Marcus had endured. "Elena, I've been thinking about expanding the security consulting business we discussed. There are probably other people in situations like mine who need help identifying domestic threats. That's a good idea, Mr. Wellington. With everything we learned about how these criminals operate, we could help other families protect themselves. Marcus had indeed been planning to use his experience to help others. Working with Santos, he was developing a consulting service that would help wealthy individuals and families identify potential domestic threats and financial predators. The service would include background investigations, security assessments, and education about the warning signs of exploitation. That afternoon, Marcus received a call from his attorney, Robert Chun, who had been handling the civil aspects of the case. Marcus, we've reached settlements with the medical supply companies that sold chemicals to Victoria. They've agreed to implement stronger verification procedures for toxic substances and to pay damages to all the victims in Morrison's cases. How much? Total settlements of $12 million, split among all the victim families. It's not just about the money. These companies are now required to report suspicious purchases to law enforcement. Marcus was pleased that the case was leading to systemic changes that would make it harder for future criminals to operate. The investigation had revealed gaps in oversight of chemical sales, medical record keeping, and financial monitoring that were being addressed at both state and federal levels. As evening approached, Marcus walked through the mansion that had been both his home and his prison during Victoria's poisoning campaign. Every room held memories of his gradual realization that he was being systematically betrayed by someone he loved. In his office, Marcus opened the safe where he had stored evidence during the investigation. Inside was a small glass vial containing a sample of the final smoothie Victoria had prepared for him, the one that was supposed to cause his complete mental breakdown and lead to his permanent incapacitation. Laboratory analysis had shown that the smoothie contained enough toxins to cause severe brain damage or death. If Marcus had actually consumed the entire drink, he would probably not have survived the night. Victoria's final attempt at poisoning wasn't designed to create gradual symptoms. It was intended to eliminate him entirely once she had the legal framework in place to inherit his assets. Marcus kept the vial as a reminder of how close he had come to losing everything, and how important it was to trust his instincts about people and situations. He had learned that evil could wear a beautiful face and speak in loving words while harboring the most destructive intentions. A year after Victoria's sentencing, Marcus established the Wellington Foundation for Domestic Security, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping families identify and prevent domestic financial crimes. The foundation provided free consulting services to people who suspected they were being exploited by family members or caregivers, and it funded research into better detection methods for domestic poisoning and financial fraud. Elena became the foundation's director of family services, using her experience and natural protective instincts to help other people in dangerous situations. Her story of courage in confronting Victoria had inspired many other domestic workers to report suspicious activities they witnessed in their employers' homes. Marcus never remarried, though he eventually began dating again after extensive therapy and careful evaluation of potential partners. His experience with Victoria had taught him to value authenticity over beauty and substance over charm. He developed close relationships with several women over the years, but he never again allowed himself to be completely vulnerable to someone without extensive verification of their character and background. The Wellington Corporation continued to prosper, and Marcus used his wealth to fund various charitable causes related to domestic violence prevention, elder abuse awareness, and medical fraud detection. He became a sought-after speaker on corporate security and personal protection, sharing his story to help other business leaders avoid similar pitfalls. Dr. Morrison's medical license was permanently revoked, and several medical institutions implemented new oversight procedures to prevent similar abuse by healthcare professionals. The case led to federal legislation requiring more stringent background checks for doctors who frequently testify in competency hearings, and mandatory reporting of suspicious patterns in patient incapacitation cases. Victoria served her time in a maximum security federal prison, where she reportedly showed no remorse for her actions and continued to insist that Marcus had somehow fabricated the evidence against her. She was denied parole multiple times due to her refusal to acknowledge the harm she had caused and her apparent lack of rehabilitation. 5 years after the trial, Marcus received a letter forwarded through his attorney from Victoria's prison. In it, she claimed to have found religion and asked for his forgiveness, saying she wanted to make amends for her crimes. Marcus showed the letter to his therapist, who advised him that responding would likely not be beneficial to his continued healing. Marcus chose not to reply. He had learned that forgiveness was something he could grant for his own peace of mind, but that didn't require him to have any continued contact with the person who had tried to destroy his life. Victoria would have to find her redemption without his participation. By the 10th anniversary of his poisoning ordeal, Marcus had built a new life focused on meaningful relationships, purposeful work, and helping others avoid the trauma he had experienced. The Wellington Foundation had helped hundreds of families identify domestic threats and had contributed to numerous convictions of financial predators. Elena remained one of his closest friends and most trusted advisors. She had used the education fund Marcus provided to earn a degree in criminal justice and had become an expert in domestic security consulting. Her children had all graduated from college, and she had been able to buy a beautiful home for her extended family. Marcus often reflected on how Elena's courage and loyalty had literally saved his life. Without her willingness to risk her own safety to help him, he would have become another victim of Victoria and Morrison's criminal enterprise. The experience had taught him that heroism often came in quiet, unrecognized forms, like a housekeeper who chose to do the right thing despite personal danger. Looking back on the entire ordeal, Marcus felt a complex mixture of emotions. The betrayal and near-death experience had been traumatic and life-changing, but it had also taught him valuable lessons about trust, relationships, and the importance of remaining alert to danger even in familiar surroundings. He had learned that wealth and success provided no immunity from personal betrayal, and that the people closest to you could sometimes pose the greatest threats. But he had also learned that there were genuinely good people in the world, like Elena, Santos, and Detective Gonzalez, who would risk themselves to help others when justice was at stake. Most importantly, Marcus had discovered inner strength he never knew he possessed. When his life was threatened and his mind was being systematically poisoned, he had found the courage and clarity to fight back effectively. The experience had transformed him from someone who trusted blindly into someone who trusted wisely, and from someone who focused purely on business success into someone who understood the deeper values that made as the police led Victoria and Morrison away. Detective Gonzalez explained to Marcus that the entire operation had been recorded and that the evidence against both conspirators was overwhelming. "We have them dead to rights," she told him. The recorded conversations, the laboratory analysis of the poisons, the financial records, and the fake medical documents provide a complete picture of their conspiracy. Marcus felt a mixture of relief, anger, and sadness as he watched Victoria being taken away. The woman he had married and trusted had turned out to be a calculating criminal who had nearly succeeded in destroying his life for money. But he was alive, his health would recover, and justice was finally being served. The nightmare was over, though the legal proceedings and emotional recovery would take much longer to complete. Marcus agreed. He told Victoria he had urgent business matters to handle and would be staying at his downtown office for the next few nights. She seemed annoyed but accepted his explanation. As Marcus packed a bag, he felt a mixture of relief and anticipation. After months of being a victim, he was finally ready to turn the tables on the woman who had been trying to destroy his mind and steal his fortune. The final confrontation was approaching, and Marcus was determined to see justice served against the people who had treated his life as expendable in their quest for wealth and power. As evening approached and Victoria's return drew near, Marcus prepared himself for the most challenging performance of his life. He had to continue pretending to be a weak, confused victim while secretly building the case that would expose his wife's attempted murder. The sound of Victoria's car in the driveway made Marcus's heart race. Soon she would be back, expecting to find him weakened by another dose of poison. Instead, she would find a man who was finally fighting back, even though she wouldn't know it yet. The real battle for Marcus Wellington's life was about to begin. Marcus knew he needed help, but he also knew he couldn't trust anyone in his regular circle. Victoria had been charming and social, and many of his friends and business associates adored her. He needed someone who could investigate quietly and help him gather evidence. Then he thought of Elena. She had seen something that made Victoria threaten her, which meant she knew at least part of the truth. If Marcus could gain Elena's trust and convince her to help him, they might be able to expose Victoria's plan before it was too late. But first, he had to survive another night in a house where his own wife was trying to destroy him, one meal at a time. The next morning would bring new challenges and the beginning of Marcus's fight to reclaim his health, his company, and his life from the woman who had sworn to love and cherish him.